Hello and welcome to the Kick Sugar Summit, the world's first summit on the topic of sugar, sugar addiction, and sugar addiction recovery. We know that if we're going to reverse our rising rates of chronic disease, we need to reduce or eliminate our consumption of sugar and refined carbohydrates. We are here to help you do that. There are a lot of speakers on our summit and a lot of information. Don't get overwhelmed. Catch who you can and just let the rest go. Alternatively, you could purchase one of our Summit VIP packages, which comes with an awesome ebook summarizing the core insights of each speaker, a year's worth of resources from our world of experts, and access to a whole year of weekly drop-in live Q&As with me, Florence, your host. Thank you for being here. I hope you love the summit, and I hope it changes your life. Welcome, everybody, to an interview today with Alan and Angie Thomas. I'm actually going to read the lovely bio that they wrote to share with me because it's a bit of a story and it takes us on a journey, and I want to share it with you exactly as they shared it with me. So on March 2nd in 2017, at the age of 55, Alan Thomas stepped on a scale and it read 304 pounds, literally. Literally, panic set in. It was the day after his 31st wedding anniversary, and three thoughts ran through his mind. First, he could not ever recall meeting a 65-year-old man who was more than 100 pounds overweight. His experience as a life insurance professional told him that he had less than 10 years to live. Second, he would likely be known as his wife Angie's first husband, since he would probably be dead in less than 10 years. And third, all of the dreams he'd hoped to accomplish in the future would be cut short by his obesity. In that state of panic, while standing on the scale, Alan reached for his cell phone and snapped a picture, because at that moment he made up his mind to never see those numbers on a scale that he stood on again. Fast forward 260 days, Alan stepped on the same scale and weighed 175 pounds. He had conquered a lifelong battle with obesity in 260 days, 129 pounds gone in less than a year. Alan had been on dozens and dozens of diets and exercise plans and never been able to take off the weight. I imagine he'd been able to take some of it off, but maybe not keep it off. And his wife, Angie, joined Alan on his weight loss journey and was able to also lose 65 pounds in 190 days. This inspired them to help others by creating their flagship community called Rethink Dieting, where they've made it their mission to help other men and women who struggle with their weight to finally get in the best shape of their lives, have vibrant health, and stick around to make new memories with their loved ones, even if they've been on every diet known to man. So what was really exciting to me about being introduced to Alan Thomas and Angie is that there's lots of right ways. There's lots of right ways to lose weight. There's lots of right ways to break up a sugar. There's lots of right ways to do lots of things. This, I suspect, is going to be a unique approach. So I'm really excited to learn more about it because I like offering options. There's lots of different right paths. You just got to find the one that works for you. Because I'll bet you Alan has met people who have totally reversed their obesity using approaches that he tried that didn't work for him, right? So it's all about the fit. So I'm excited to get into this journey with Alan and Angie and their approach and what they've discovered about what works for them and how they help others rethink dieting. Welcome, Alan and Angie.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Florence. Thanks for having us. This is fun.
Yeah. Why don't I know I sort of hit some highlights with your journey. Is there anything more you want to add about your struggle with weight and obesity?
Just that when it's funny when you're reading it, how it takes me back there. I mean, literally, it takes me back to that day. I mean, I get choked up just thinking about it. I didn't plan on this part. So, but it just what other people who go through it, just understanding what they've been through and the pain from the emotional pain that obesity causes. I mean, we all know about, listen, none of us are dumb. I mean, really. I mean, all of us know that obesity is going to take your life if you don't do something about it. There's nobody out there that I've ever met that thinks they can eat a bowl full of sugar every day and lose weight too. I mean, and so, but we continue to do these behaviors because it's almost like the erosion. The picture behind us is about a mile from our house. It's a little rainier today. We're getting a lot of rain on Amelia Island, but it's just like the erosion that happens on the seashore. I mean, you don't even notice it's happening until you look down on the scale and you see 304 pounds and you're like, holy smokes. Oh my gosh. And so, yeah, when you were reading it, I was just like, it took me back. I don't allow myself to go there very often in my brain, but I really did. So, just that piece of it. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think everyone has that story who really have had, the breakdown before the breakthrough, right? That
Hmm.
moment, the hitting bottom. There's so many different words that we use where we're just like, I'm done. I have to make a change. I can't. What I've been trying, what I've been throwing at this problem so far hasn't worked. I'm going to have to do something different and maybe
Yeah.
something radical.
There had been many, many things over the 30 years or so that we really were struggling with the weight also, Florence. I mean, many in any plan, any diet, we had books and books on our shelf at one time.
Yeah, we got fed up and threw them all away one time. I think
Yeah.
we counted that I'd
So,
been on about 75, something like that. And they were all wrong, by the way. Every one of them was wrong. It couldn't have been me. I mean, and that's where we go to in our brain. I mean, when we start thinking about, when we talk to men and women that struggle, we spend years, typically decades, building these coping mechanisms with why we can't do something. With why, well, gosh, I could never do without sugar because I've got a birthday coming up on Tuesday, and I've got this coming up on that day, and I've got this coming up, and oh, by the way, we've got to do that, and oh, I'm addicted to it, and yada yada yada, and we all know, and while we know that the repercussions that happen because of the decisions we make, we know that they'll hurt us, but we believe it's going to be down the road so far, down the road. And like if that scale had said 299.99999, it would have impacted me. It wouldn't have. It would have just been another day. It would have been another day. But the fact that it said that three on the beginning, and that number is different for different people. I mean, some people it's four or five before it really hits them. And it's just so interesting, whatever that, like you said, that tipping point, and where you're willing to do whatever it takes, where you're willing to do whatever that thing is. And had I ever considered giving up sugar? No. No, why would I? I mean, I loved it. It was awesome. It's like cocaine. I've never done cocaine, but I assume it would be similar. But 260 days of no sugar has some impact. I didn't sit around and plan it, but it's like common sense. I mean, it's just like, I mean, there was not one weight loss strategy that I'd ever tried in the past that included sugar. I mean, none of them. So was I wrong thinking that I could get away with it? Well, yeah, you think? I mean, so when we talk about rethink dieting with our clients, I mean, our approach is different. We don't tell anybody what to eat. We refuse to, and the reason we don't is not because there aren't better ways. We know there are, but people have to take ownership of the process at some level. This was me, and it's so interesting. I know I think about one of our clients, Sean, who only person I've ever met that's never been on a diet that was morbidly obese. Never been on one in his life. Never. And I mean, I thought he was kidding. He was 452 pounds in a wheelchair if he had to go more than 10 feet. So you could say it was hurting him. And I said, I'm never going to tell you what to eat. And I said, because that's not your problem. He said, it is my problem. I said, no, it's not. I said, it's not your problem. I said, you have to change what you eat, of course. But I said, but if I tell you, it will be wrong. But if you follow the processes we teach and you become the expert on you, then the only person that gets to take responsibility for that is you. And it was so funny. I said, He said, but what am I going to eat? He kept harping on it. And I said, well, if your wife and your two daughters had a gun to their head, and the only way you got them back alive was to drop one of those 452 pounds a week until you reached your ideal weight. I said, could you save their life? And he said, yeah, I'm pretty sure I could. I said, well, what would you do? Now, this guy had never been on a diet before. And I said, what would you do? And he thought for what seemed like 10 minutes. I was on the phone. It wasn't a Zoom call. It was just a telephone call. He said, I've got the answer. I said, what's the answer? He said, I'm going to eat less. I said, that's where you start. Now 170 or more pounds and still going, 100, almost 180 pounds and still going and walking and doing all that, all those things. Has he made changes? Of course he has. Has he seen drastic results in his health? Of course he has. But it was never the diet. It was always, it sounds cliche for me to say it now because I've said it so much, but it was always that decision. Does he eat sugar? Well, he might have it occasionally. I don't know, but there's no way he's losing weight if he's eating sugar all the time. I know that. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out.
Mhm. Uh, this is going back a little bit. It might sound like a random question. Do you
Okay.
you feel that your consumption of sugar, like, do you feel like it was truly on the addiction spectrum, or was it just a comforting food and you enjoyed it, it was convenient and tasted good, or do you feel like there was some addiction there for you?
But I'm careful to say addiction or not. I think there could be evidence to that, but it's interesting. It was, and that's such a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that, and I love the question because there is a piece of it, I believe it was more of an emotional addiction to me. Okay, it was an emotional addiction. It was the setting. It was kind of interesting. I used to sit in front of TV every night and eat the single serving sizes of the Doritos that say family on them. I don't know why they say family. I've never figured that out.
You.
I mean, I would eat those, and I would, whatever was at hand, I would sit there and eat. I would watch TV. I got in this pattern, and somebody who was a lot smarter than me, I noticed they weren't using television in the evening, so I got rid of cable TV. Now this is January 2017. Isn't it kind of interesting? On March 2nd, we turned everything around. Less than a month, but I got out of that pattern, and so, but it was. I think if it had been an addiction for us, and this is great. I mean, you're really making me think here. If it had been an addiction for me, I think that there would have been more of a backlash physically than there was. It was like when we made the decision, when I made the decision, and Angie made her decision because she had to make her decision. Then it was funny. It got easy.
Mhm.
And I know that sounds silly, but it's just interesting. I know when it's like a client of ours right now. He started at almost 400 pounds, and and 8 weeks in, he's like 30 pounds down, and it's interesting just watching him eat. It's just like he says for the first time in his life, he said he's in control. Now, what's interesting, he stopped drinking. I didn't tell him to stop drinking. Didn't tell him to stop drinking. I know because I'm not going to tell him it because if I tell him, it'll be wrong.
Mhm.
And by the way, where I came to this conclusion about it being wrong was way before we decided to do this as work. It was never intended to be work.
Right.
When it was suggested to me by our mentor, who's been our mentor for like 20 years, Dan Miller. Dan said, "You ought a weight loss coach." I'm like, that is the dumbest thing in the world. I don't want to tell people what to eat. I'm the worst example in the world. I was just a failure. He said, "No, no, I think you ought to consider it." But what was interesting is people were coming to Angie and I and saying, "What did you do? What did you?" Because that's what people were asking, but that's not really what they're asking. What they're really asking is, how can I eat as much as I want, whenever I want, and whatever I want, and not have any detrimental effects or anything, and still drop weight? How can and so it was so interesting. I would tell people what I ate, and I ate plenty. I would tell them exactly what I ate. I would do this just to help them because I was thinking I was helping them. and this lady, she was referred to us by a friend in North Carolina, a business colleague's wife, and she was referred, and she was a very nice lady. She said, "I just want to talk to you." I said, "Happy to." And Angie and I were talking to her, and she was saying, I said, "Like this," which was perfectly nutritious food. It was not crazy fad dieting stuff. It wasn't anything silly. And she said, "Oh, I could never do this because," she started becoming a microbiologist. Now, she had no microbiology background to my knowledge, but she started giving me microbiology data on why she couldn't eat that way and all these things that she couldn't do. So she had this, so I was quite impressed. So I asked her a question, the next logical question: "What'd you have for lunch?" And she said to me, "Well, I went to Taco Bell." I said, "Awesome. I love Taco Bell. I haven't eaten there in a long time, but I love Taco Bell. What'd you have?" And she had, the chimichanga with the gross cheese and all the stuff. And I said, and the next natural question that I asked her was, "What'd you have for dessert?" "Oh, I had Kit Kats for dessert." I said, "Awesome. I love Kit Kats, but I don't eat them anymore. But I love Kit Kats." I said, "Listen, you sound like you've got it figured out. God bless you." And from that day forward, I decided I would never tell anybody what to eat, because she was a microbiologist when it came to making a change that would have a positive impact on her life. But when it came to changing behavior that she was very comfortable with, that she'd gone extremely comfortable with, she became completely oblivious to what any nutrition was. And she was a smart lady. I mean, clearly, because she started rattling off things to me like a PhD in microbiology. I'm like, holy smokes! And you ate Taco Bell. So it's the behavior change that's got to take place, as you know. I mean, you know this. I mean, you've got both sides. You've got the technical side and the behavior side down. But it's so interesting when people go on this path of where they just become crazy when it becomes about them. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And the reason I was asking that question was just because I think, and it's a theory, and I think you just disproved my theory. I've been playing with this idea that I suspect that it embedded in addiction is a pathological form of hope, is a pathological optimism. And I just thought, oh, maybe Alan would say, yeah, I think I fell on the spectrum. I think I know what you're talking about, that pathological optimism. That's not going to happen to me. I'm 299, but I'm not going to be the one that has a stroke or whatever, right? And I think somehow it's part of the amnesia that like somebody who's a microbiologist can know the nitty gritty of the value of food and look you in the eye and say she eats Kit Kats. Like it's like something is going on that blinds us, right? The 12 steps would say denial.
Yeah.
But I
living in Egypt, yeah, dead center of Egypt by the denial.
We just don't want it to hurt. We just don't want it to hurt. It's not worth it to us to give up what we need to give up in order to get to the other side and have the life that we're really created to live. We don't want any pain.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Positively. Yeah. Give me the Adonis body without ever doing a push-up.
Yeah, it's like somehow when I was in my deep end with food and struggling with that, I guess I just kept thinking positive, like, oh, it's gonna turn around. Like, anyways, of course it didn't until you hit the bottom, and then you make something deep within you shifts, like that decision point that you're talking about. And it's interesting because there's lots of different sort of approaches to addiction. One of them is called rational recovery, and I don't know if you're familiar with it. It sounds similar, and I'm so intrigued because that's the path that I really resonate with, where he basically says it's a decision when you split, you become of two minds. There's a part of you that can see the behavior and the choices, and another part that doesn't want to do that, and a part that still does, that's in the pleasure, in the, running away from feelings or whatever, enjoying the pleasure of it. And another part that's stepped away, is looking at that scale saying, I'm never going to see that number again. That part has pulled apart. We're no longer one with the body urge and the pleasure and the whole experience with food that has brought us to this breaking point. Anyway, so let's go there. I'd love to know more about how you move people through the same journey that you went on. If there's more that you could say to help us understand.
No, I'm happy to. I mean, it's so much of it is the decision, and I keep going back to that. But it's just like when you reached your low point, but it wasn't the lowest point, because the lowest point would have had you 6 feet under, and that's where, and unfortunately, that's what we see. So many people, they always believe that, number one, that today's the worst day; it'll never get worse. It'll never get worse. And they have this delusional optimism. I think you use the term, which is exactly right. I mean, we'll talk to people that are 300 pounds, 400 pounds, whatever, that have, and I don't shame people for their obesity, because I was the worst of the worst. I mean, but at the end of the day, when the first thing that we do is, I want to understand why somebody, and you and I were talking about this earlier, about just ideal weight. What do you believe your ideal weight is? And it's, in our definition of ideal weight, is who you were created to be. Okay, not what it says on a BMI chart. It's going to probably correlate with that pretty doggone well. But I ask people this question, and I would encourage anybody that's listening to this to struggle with weight to really get clear on this. If the creator of the universe, and I'm not going to preach to anybody, if I do, I'll take an offering. You don't want me to do that. But if whatever they believe, but who created them from the beginning of time, knew them, created them, showed up at their house with the version of them that they were created to be at their present age. What does that person weigh? What does that version of you weigh? Okay. And it's so interesting to me. We'll ask people that we do free consultations with people called breakthrough calls, and I'll ask them what your ideal weight is. And when I sense that they're not really telling me what they really believe it is, I'll ask them that question. And it's so funny. Some will go up 20 pounds, some will go down 3. So I had a guy one time go down 3 pounds. I said, 3 pounds? Why? He said, I just didn't think you would believe it was possible. Okay. So just get really, really, really clear. First thing is, get clear on who you were created to be, your identity. Does that make sense? The version of you that's being covered up by the 20 pounds, the 50 pounds, the 100 pounds, the 200 pounds. And the amount is not what's significant. It's the consequences of that weight, that what's cost you emotionally, that really significant. So when you get clear about that, then that's, because that's a big piece. Part of the process we walk people through is that clarity. Because how many times have you heard people say, I just want to lose some weight? If you were starting a business, you wouldn't say, I just want to make some money.
I just want to have a business.
I, yeah, but you see what I'm saying? We do
Pretty
it in
big.
other areas. Yeah, yeah. I mean, so get really clear, specifics on it is a huge piece of it. And then move out of Egypt, get out of the denial, and excuse my metaphors there, or my wordplay, but get out of denial and say, okay, if your family was on the line and not you, if it was their life on the line, because we'll always do more for others than we'll do for ourselves, what would you do if you had to lose weight safely? Well, you're dropping sugar. That's gone. Okay. The packaged food and the fast food's gone. I mean, I've had people who had told me, and it was a lady who was, when I was in insurance, she was probably in excess of 500 pounds. She was 50 years old, every medical condition known to man. I was writing her what's called a guaranteed issue policy, which means you have breathe on a mirror, make it fog up, and you can buy the policy. It's just not going to cover you for a long time because you're so high risk. And she saw, I had to put my before and after picture on my business cards because my old clients didn't recognize me. And I didn't do it to brag. I did it because, when you lose over 100 pounds at 5'11", you're going to change. And you know this. And I'm not saying that to boast, but she saw that and she said, oh, you lost weight. What did you do? And this is before I had the conversation with Kit Kat lady. And I said, and I started to say, and she was eating Pringles potato chips at the time. Okay. And where she could not get up and get it, her nephew got up and got the Pringles because she couldn't walk there without becoming winded. She had her oxygen tank on, which is all being impacted by her obesity. It was all obesity driven. And and I started to tell her, what I did, which was obviously I was eating more fruit and vegetables. I was not eating sugar. I was not eating packaged food. I was eating lean protein, that kind of thing. And she looks at me and she says, oh no, I can't do it. I've tried that. I can't do it without my sandwich. Now this, and I mean, you want to laugh, but I wanted to cry, Florence, because I mean, this woman couldn't walk. She's 50 years old. I mean, I'll be 62 in a week. Angie's like 20, but I'll be 50, 62 in a week. She hates when I say my name, but I always clarify. She's much younger. But she couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without her oxygen tank. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about 4 or 5 steps. I'm not talking about long stairs. I can remember this so well. And what broke my heart for her was she believed that. She believed that. So when people start thinking about what they're going to have to do without, don't think about that. Think about what you're going to get. Think about what it's going to be like the day that you reach your ideal weight. Think about the dream. Think about. I remember what our mutual friend Matt McWilliams. When I first, he's the only person I've ever cold called for, and I don't do that normally for weight loss. And I said, "You want help with your weight?" And he said yes. And I said, "Okay, cool." So, but one of the things he locked in on was how it's going to feel. How it's going to feel to walk in strong to a meeting. How it's going to feel to walk in where he didn't feel like the fat guy in the room anymore, but he felt like the strong guy in the room. And how it's going to, and it's amazing how that can move the needle. And when you latch onto the version of you that you were created to be, it starts pulling you in that direction. It starts pulling, and if you start treating it like you would your business, start treating it like you would your children's education, start treating it like you would your dog. I mean, we were showing puppy. You were showing us your puppy earlier before we got on it, and who is going to be massive, which we want to see pictures when he's full grown. So, but in our dog, but we treat our dogs better than we treat ourselves. And so when I walk people through it, I mean, they've got to get super clear on why in the heck they're doing it. Why? I mean, because why bother if they're just going to the land of eat as much as you want, whenever you want, and whatever you want? It doesn't exist. There is no magic pill. There are things you do. If I'm eating sugar, well, it's going to drive my hunger tomorrow. It's going to drive my hunger. But I want people to own it. I want them to figure it out on their own, and we guide them obviously, through our process and all. But at the end of the day, it's quantifiable. If they're eating sugar, they're going to be hungrier in 2 hours. We know it. If they're eating bread, a lot of bread. Hey, you want to try it? And they'll try to corner me into telling them what they eat. And I had somebody recently do this who she was and I'm all and the way Angie and I approach it. We said, bring us data. We don't want to hear the drama. Just bring us the data. What are you doing? And she said, well, should I be doing this or should I be doing this? I said, well, let's test it like you would your business. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, let's test it. Tell me your numbers on this way. You've done that for 90 days. And she was down on this, 40 pounds, right at 40 pounds. So she's doing pretty stinking good, but it's never fast enough. You know that, right? I mean, it's like building your business. Is it ever gone fast enough for you? and so we always want that land of perfection that doesn't exist. But it was interesting. Her other idea, she wanted me to tell her what to eat so that she could blame somebody other than herself, and not me necessarily, but the diet. It's so when you start taking responsibility for it, when you start saying, okay, this is on me, when you start saying the things like, well, if I don't eat, like for me, what drove me was I knew that Angie would be married to another man. We've been married now 37 years. I knew that there would be. I don't think.
Which blows my mind.
Are you shopping?
Because I'm like, there could never be another
no,
for me. But it made it work for him.
Nice try. But if I was dead, there'd be suitors. So anyway, I married up. But when you start thinking about your daughter, our daughter now, who is 20, almost 22, she was 15 at the time. When she started thinking about, she didn't want to bring her friends over because she was embarrassed before her dad. Okay, she got teased about it. Or a son who's 29 now, and he said maybe dad doesn't love us enough to lose the weight. You start thinking about your legacy. You start thinking about those things, and it's so interesting when you get that kind of leverage. Archimedes says, and he's somebody I didn't know personally because I'm not quite that old yet, but Archimedes said, if you give me a lever long enough and a place to sit, I can move the world. And that's what losing weight is like for people, I believe, who've struggled their whole life. They've got to get a lever really, really long, and they've got to get leverage on themselves, because I got news for you. They're still going to keep making cake.
Twinkies.
They're still going to have
Debbie's
Twinkie and Debbie's and all, and they don't need to look for somebody else to snatch it out of their hand. And but you also, there's a piece that I really invite people to do too, is to forgive yourself. Have some grace. You give everybody else all this grace. I mean, we all do. I mean, we met your daughter, who seems like a lovely human, but I'm sure she's had her moments where she wasn't perfect. She seemed very perfect to us, but but you forgive her. You don't even think about it. But yourself will hang on. We get 99% of it right, and we kick our backside because we got the 1% wrong. And when we learn how to celebrate that part of us, and then we learn how to start counting the wins that we're getting with our journey, and we see that it's not going to happen tomorrow, then we get this thing called momentum. And it's insane what momentum does. It's like one of our clients, Rick, he was 70 years old when we met him. And I'm not saying this to boast, but I'm saying this to everybody. If you think you can't lose weight, I want you to listen to this story and you tell me what your excuse is. Okay. Rick found us somehow. He says he doesn't know how he found us. Because he was 388 pounds, 70 years old. Now he is what I call a unicorn. I've met very few people over 65. Men, women will live longer, but they'll have medical issues. But men typically, they're dead by 65 if they're over 100 pounds overweight. But he was 70, heart attack survivor. Now, 1 or 2 heart attacks, you're dead. Okay, so he was meeting the odds with his weight. He was meeting the odds with that he had type 2 diabetes, had all these medical conditions. Oh, by the way, he has fused vertebrae. He walks with a walker. He walks around with one of his walkers with tennis balls on the end. So he exercised almost completely off the table. So after listening to him tell me his story for a little while, I said something. I said, I'm positive we can get you to your ideal weight if you'll do the work. He said, you're kidding, right? And I said, no. And so he enrolled in our process. He did everything. Okay. Now I said, it's not going to be easy. I said, but if it was easy, you've already done it. And he said, well, I've been fighting this for 52 years now, 140 pounds later and still going. Okay. It's taken him 2 years to get there, but do you think that he's sorry that he's there? It's like he's tackling his last 60 pounds, I think, right now, whatever it is. And he's like, and he's dialing it, and he's become this expert on him. Oh, by the way, he listed 8 pieces of property last week because he's going to live too long because he's lost all this weight. So, I mean, that's what we call a quality problem that we want people to have. And it didn't take anything except a decision and his unwavering willingness to go the distance, no matter what it cost him personally, as far as stuff. Does he exercise? I mean, he does some chair exercises and things, but he can't. But does he walk across the parking lot occasionally? His pants fall off because he's lost so much weight. Yep, he does that too. That's another story on another time. But when people tell me it's not possible, I say, and they'll say, but you don't understand. I've got this condition, this condition, this. I said, I get it. My heart goes out to you. And it does. And I don't mean to make light of that, but I don't know of any data where it's possible to gain weight without consumption. Now, maybe I missed something, but I can't. I've searched repeatedly for that. And now, is there a likelihood that there are people that have a bigger struggle? Of course it is. There are people who have metabolic issues. There are people that have conditions. I mean, we've got clients that have been through. We interviewed a lady the other day who was 10 weeks in. She's down 37 pounds. She's got she had weight loss surgery. She had all these things, but those things, they take out perfectly good organs, and it still doesn't solve the real problem. We meet all kind of people in those conditions, and the point is there's always a way, but you have to be willing to go the distance, and you have to get that leverage on yourself. And so when people say I can't, and it's just like Henry Ford said, if you believe you can, you are right. If you believe you cannot, you're right. If you say I can't do without sugar, you're right, you can't. But if you believe you can, and I mean, we stopped cold turkey. It didn't. Has anybody ever died from stopping sugar, Florence? You'll probably know that. I don't know. Has that occurred to me this morning? Has that ever happened?
Not that I'm aware of.
Isn't that interesting? Now, there's no statistical data on that you're aware of, and you're an expert clearly in the field. I mean, there's no data on anybody passing away from not eating sugar. Huh. Isn't that interesting? Now, is there any, do you believe there's data, and I already know the answer, but do you believe there's data that there have been people that have died from eating sugar?
Oh, there's plenty of evidence of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I mean, you see my point. It's almost so simple. It's crazy, but we make it complicated. Now, are there better ways to do it? Of course there are. Are there different things that people do? Of course there are. But when we say we cannot, it's just this limiting belief. I mean, for crying out loud, you've got a guy who is talking on this. I want you to realize the possibility for people. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a physical fitness expert. I'm not a nutritionist. I don't mean to hurt your uh, summit here, but by having on my lack. But I want people to see that the failure that I had was where, and failure that Angie had with hers, because hers was different. I mean, her situation was different. She never got to the point I got to, but still 60 over 60 pounds was a lot. But the point is, we learned from by being one step ahead, by doing the things that we already knew what to do. You know, getting rid of sugar, you think. Now we have to keep some sugar around our house for a reason. I will tell you, we have a daughter with type 1 diabetes. Okay. And type 1 is not brought on by obesity or any of that. So, but yeah, we don't do sugar either. So, but it's common. Don't you think isn't it interesting? That's common sense. I
Mhm.
mean, am I wrong? I mean, talk to me. Am I wrong? Have I got this wrong?
Well, no, yeah. I mean, and I think most people would nod their head and go, I know, I know. That's why I'm so frustrated that I understand, even in my heart of hearts, I would like
Mhm.
to reduce or eliminate my consumption of these junk foods. I don't even find pleasure in them anymore. Sometimes people have the experience, I've had the experience where I'm literally eating Doritos or junk or whatever, and I don't even want to be. Like I can hear it in my head. I don't even want to be doing this, right? That you can feel that polarization inside us. There's a part that's driving these behaviors. And then there's another part that's observing, going, what is this? Right. And I feel like what you're describing, because all of the different steps that you've shared so far, starting with what do you think is your ideal weight? When you say you want to lose weight, what does that mean? Give me sort of a number, right? And if you're not sure, imagine that your creator has knocked on the door and said, oh, this is how your body was designed. You're going to be 150-ish. Because what you're doing when you ask that question is you're accessing the higher self part,
Yeah.
right? You're accessing the part that knows, the part that's awakened, the part that's seeking change and recovery and freedom and the dreams, right? Not the part that's hooked into that doesn't believe they can't live without a sandwich. And so those questions are accessing that deeper part of a person, like the self, the spirit, the higher self, whatever the word is. And that's that ambivalent part, right? This part starts to sort of step into the leadership role, that I have authority over my life. I get to decide. I'm the boss. The buck stops with me, not this part. And when I blend with this part that really loves Doritos and thinks the best thing on earth is just pigging out and numbing out and checking out on the couch every night, right, in front of the
Yeah.
TV, right? And so there's this unblending. And then your second question was, why? Like, why do you want to turn this around, have your future look different than this? Because that pathological hope will tell us my pathological hope. And I've always prided myself on being an optimist, but I could see there's a shadow side to it. And the shadow side is that my optimist will tell me that the future is going to be better. Just next month will be better, when it's summer, when blah, blah, blah. There's always this time in the future when the ship's going to come in. It's insane. It justifies tolerating what's intolerable, that needs changing, needs me to grow up and show up and look at what's not working in my life and make a change, it allows me to let stuff perpetuate for years. So your question about your why, like if you had a daughter and a wife that you loved and the only way you could save their life was to figure this out, could you do it? Right? Like, again, you're asking that self, that true self part to awaken and step into the authority position. And then your other thing around grace is that, again, it's if to be able to give grace to yourself, there's a part that has to be able to give grace to the part that just loves the feeling of just checking out with Doritos on the couch, right? You can extend kindness to that. I understand.
I mean, it's like what I think about. I'm thinking about Tony. I mean,
Mhm.
Tony, 4 weeks in, guy was 313 when he started with us. Okay, 313, and I tell people, I said, you get off your path, it's going to take a while to get back on.
Yes.
He got off his path about 4 weeks in because he had a buddy that asked him to go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and they did the beer and the nacho thing and whatever they wanted. And he got off. So he dropped about, I don't know, he dropped about 15 or 20 pounds, in the first month. And I said, and he was expecting me to lash him when he got back, and I said, oh no, I said, I'm thrilled you did it now. He said, what do you mean you're thrilled I did it? I said, I'm thrilled you did it now because now you have this information that you have never bothered to learn. And you're going to learn from it. You're going to figure out how long it takes you to get back on track. Now, 120 pounds later, he knows not to do that now. But it's interesting. We look at these costs, and you're really stirring my mind too. These great questions too, to Florence. I mean, what you're asking, but thinking about how much emotional energy extra weight causes or takes from you, how it steals. Like I think about, Angie, when, I mean, you don't like your invisibility thing. I mean, it's,
Just
yeah.
um, the daily run to the post office here in the South, even though we're North Florida, we're from South Carolina, and everyone holds the door and so forth. Even for you, literally people, men and women, 2 feet ahead would just drop the door to me, and it never occurred to me that I was invisible actually until after I was on my journey, and people started holding the door. Men, women, they could be 10 feet ahead. And I wasn't down to my goal weight. I was like, what happened? But it woke me up to realize that I had been invisible all that time. And yes, it hurt my feelings when they wouldn't hold the door open, but I didn't really put it into the perspective that I was actually invisible and they did not see me. And in talking to other people that are thin and trim that we have in our life through work and so forth, they're like, that people are invisible. We don't even see.
Wow.
Yeah, we've heard this
We've heard
multiple times. I thought it was just
and
Angie.
I wasn't
I did.
400 pounds. I was 188 pounds at 5'7", but I wasn't comfortable. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
We live a mile from the beach. Let's put it that way. Yes, I did not feel cute in my bathing suits or what anything.
Yes.
But no matter that he and I love each other, when he made this decision, I was on board because I'm like, heck yeah, we're gonna get this done. And I will add, not to change the subject, but as the spouse of someone that, yes, I had my own weight loss and I could have died in the middle of the night at 60 something pounds up. But when you're living with someone that you can't imagine not having in your life anymore because they've passed away, when you go to bed at night, the last thing on my mind was, will he wake up?
Wow.
So as someone that's had both sides, the
Mhm.
spouse,
Mhm.
and I didn't even know, I didn't ride Alan on his way. His mother
No,
did that.
I
Okay.
understand.
So he knew I was here to cook and help and support. Because yes, we had ups and downs. That was my peak weight at 188, and I didn't even know what it was. I had not weighed in a couple of years. Fortunately, we're not sick, but you have to go in once a year or whatever. And I would just tell him, I'm not weighing.
The doctor, yeah.
I would just tell the
Sure,
nurse and
that's
stuff,
fine.
I'm not weighing, I'm not skinny, and I'm not obese. And they said, well, you'll have to talk to the doctor about that. And the doctor actually never told me that I needed to weigh.
When I was when I let her know, I said, sweetie, I said, I can guess your weight within 10 pounds.
But two,
Insurance agents do that all the time because as an
Oh,
insurance
interesting.
agent, you're medically qualifying people out of the gate. Okay.
um,
Well, if I meet somebody that is morbidly obese, I know what type of policy to steer them to. I don't steer them to one where they're going to get disappointed because their weight's going to take them into a whole different price bracket. Okay. So she said, you can't guess my weight. And I said, I can guess it within 10. And I guessed her 186 when she was 188. And I didn't know, I hadn't seen it. But we get this delusion that nobody can see it, that nobody notices it. And the invisibility that Angie's talking about, we've had not clients, but friends who've never been overweight. And they said, yeah, I've never thought about it. I just don't see them. You don't see it. It's so funny. I mean, we've heard this repeatedly, and we were kind of shocked with it. It's just like they're invisible, and so when you start looking at the costs, and when I'm not talking about monetary costs, not health costs are obvious. Everybody knows if you're obese or overweight, it's costing you. But if that were enough, wouldn't we all be in our skinny jeans already? I mean, wouldn't we be already be at our ideal weight? And this issue of obesity, where there's 650 million men and women worldwide that are obese or morbidly obese, 350 million children. That's 1 in 8 people. Every 7 seconds, somebody's dying of an obesity-related illness. It's like boom, 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 like that, and we're ignoring it. But when we start to consider in this thing, I didn't want to be in front of the camera. When somebody took a picture, I wanted to be one taking the picture. I didn't like seeing myself in a photograph. I didn't like going to the theme park with my daughter because I would be forced to get on one of those rides and do what's called the walk of shame, where you're asked to get off the ride because you're too fat. I didn't want to get on the airplane because of seatbelt extender. We've actually had 2 clients who have allegedly stolen seatbelt extenders from airlines because they didn't want that shame of getting we're going to be doing ceremonies when they give them back to them, so they're because they don't need them anymore. But there's so much shame around it that we have to shield ourselves from. It's like if you were if you were being verbally abused every day by somebody in your life, you would learn coping mechanisms, right? Okay, just to survive. I mean, if you couldn't get away from that person and they were verbally, well, imagine if that person was you and you were doing it to yourself. Okay. And so what we have to do is we learn these coping mechanisms. Like I used to at the beach, I'd look around the beach and say, oh, I'm not the fattest one here. That's what I would do. I was doing reverse comparison. I wasn't comparing myself to a good version. I was comparing myself to, and trust me, you can find plenty of obese people at the beach, every beach. And so I would do things like that. I would look for ways to make myself feel better about it. I would look for all these things. But at the end of the day, when somebody is truly honest with themselves, that the cost of this is every business meeting I'm walking into and I'm thinking about this monkey on my back called weight.
Yep. I was thinking of that lady that had brought in the biggest client her company had ever had. And it was from another country. The owner of the company was coming to the US to look at the plant, and they wanted the salesperson to be there. Every transaction had been over the internet or even on Zoom, just her neck up. She refused to go. She made up an excuse because she said, I know they will not want to do business with me if they see me in person.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking. I mean, heartbreaking. And there's so many other people that come to my mind that have shared similar stories. But hers was she knew she would lose this client that was an extreme client for her business. So
and we hear and that's
financially it would have been
there's so many financial wealth ramifications, but also, and this is the one that gets me the most. My wife or my husband, they love me anyway. Well, of course they do. Okay. But here's what we haven't had happen. But here's what we haven't. We've never had a spouse angry that the spouse got thin. We've never had that happen.
I think it's possible, but But for a different reason, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but obese weight gain is the number 3 cause of divorce in the United States. Did you know that?
No.
Infidelity, finances, weight. Number 3. Number 3. We haven't had spouse. I've literally been on the phone with a man. I remember like it was yesterday, and it's been a few years ago. And his wife was on the phone. We were talking about, potentially helping him, and it broke my heart. She said, "I have left him already emotionally." She's telling me this with her husband on the line, that her husband is morbidly obese. He's struggling with a couple hundred extra pounds. And and it's just heartbreaking when you hear people, because when we wake up, and I mean wake up, you've got the 304-pound reading on my scale was a wake up. It was an alarm clock. It was a wake up. At 188 for Angie, it was an alarm clock. It was a wake up. Because what happens when we wake up and we really are honest, and we quit ignoring the reality that we're living in, and we realize it's hurting our business, it's hurting our family, it's hurting our relationships, it's hurting us in our longevity. And I said this to, I don't mean to keep bringing Matt in, but I said it over and over. He's the first person I ever said it to. And he says, "You really think we can get there?" And I said, "I'm positive we can." But Matt, as you know, he's a heart-centered entrepreneur. He helps people, and his heart is for the really small micro businesses, in helping that maybe homeschooling mom find a way to keep her business afloat, for her blog or whatever, her business is. And I said to him, I said, "There's a day coming, and this is for all of us, this is for anybody listening. There's a day coming that will be your last day. I don't know when it is. You might get hit by the Domino's pizza truck on the way home. I don't know. But I mean, not to make light of it, but for most of us, it's a date that, if you're in great health, if you're trying to wait, it's way up, way off. It's out in the future. Okay. And there's an interaction that will be your last interaction. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's going into a grocery store, or at a toll booth at a bridge, going over a bridge with some other human that you have an interaction that impacts them. Does that make sense? And because I believe I believe this journey that we call life is there's so many different tentacles on it that we can't even fathom in this lifetime, but that there is somebody you're supposed to impact in the future. Maybe it's just encourage somebody. Maybe it's to really, really, maybe it's to get them completely off sugar and save their life and change their family. Yeah, I'm using your example. I mean, there's all these different things that it could be. But what if you don't get there? What if you don't get there? What's the cost of those people? And I told Matt, I remember on that call, I remember it like it was yesterday. It's been years ago. I said, my job is to get you to your meeting, to that meeting, whatever it is, because I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's so interesting that when we find people that take responsibility for what they're eating, take responsibility for their exercise, if they're physically able to do it, they take responsibility. They get better at everything. They get better results in their work. They get better. I mean, we had a client that I ask all our clients to do this. I say, call me when the magic happens. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, there's going to be something that happens that has nothing to do with weight. It's going to have everything to do with your weight loss. I said, and I want to know, because that's the drug of choice that I like. That's a better high than a sugar high. It is the drug when somebody tells you that what you did changed something. And he calls me from New York, and he said, "Hey, Alan, I just wanted to call you." He said, "I just won this award, and the CEO was talking about you and Angie from Stage." I don't know the CEO. It's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, 40,000 employees internationally. I mean, it's big operation. Because I just won the International Sales Award. I said, really? I said, good for you. When did you switch to the sales department? He says, well, here's the point. I didn't switch to the sales department. I'm still in operations, but they gave me the International Sales Award. I'm the first person ever in the history of this corporation that's gotten the International Sales Award at the International Conference in New York, where I don't know what hotel it's at. And my CEO, it was from my weight journey that caused, because here's the goal. While we have all the shame wrapped up in our weight that we get to, the 304-pound version of me, all that shame that was around it. You can't hide it. I couldn't hide 304 pounds. You can't wear enough, layers of clothing to hide it. There's no way. People see it, whether we want to admit it or not. But here's what's cool. The man or the woman that doesn't struggle with weight, they have another struggle that you don't know about and that I don't know about. When nobody gets a pass in this lifetime. When they see the physical evidence of you tackling your weight, your physical weight, it does something for these other people that's absolutely mind-boggling. It gives them hope that their weight, whatever it is, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's with children, maybe it's with an addiction that they have, maybe it's a million different things. But all of a sudden you become attractive to them, not physically attractive that where they want to know, they want to be around you. And that's what happened to this individual. He was down at the time about 100 pounds, and he drew in a client that turned out to be this massive deal for this major corporation. He said, I promised you I'd let you know. And I'm like, that's too cool. And so when you realize that there's all these possibilities out there waiting on us, if we'll do the simple, stop eating sugar, put the sugar down, step away from it. I mean, whatever that drug of choice that you're using, whether it's in an Oreo cookie or in the single serving size that they say half gallon for some reason on ice cream. I don't know why they do, but again, single serving, I mean, take them and wash them down the drain. Why not? I mean, I've done it before. Wash it down the drain. It's better off in the drain than it is in your system. And so the point I make is, when we do those simple things, they're so simple, and they really are. They're not easy. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's easy, because if it was easy, but it's so simple. When you do that, it's like this whole cornucopia. I don't know why I'm using that word. I never use that word. But this whole cornucopia of abundance and life and things that you can in situations and opportunities and things that you cannot imagine are going to appear when you get control of the person sitting between your elbows. And it's magical. That's what we get excited about. I mean, that's why when somebody says, should I eat broccoli or not? I don't know, should you? I don't like broccoli that much, but whatever. I mean, is it better than eating a bag of Doritos? Yeah, probably so. But all kind of evidence, I guarantee you. But make the decision and do what's necessary, because there's stuff waiting on you that's mind-boggling.
And maybe on those around you, obviously, you're like, our journeys affected each other. Obviously, we're planning to be here till 105 together, or some crazy number, but our family. But the gentleman that won the international sales contest, we were speaking to him one night, and we were on a Zoom, and he had his wife, who we had never met in the years, because she's just a shy lady, but he did encourage her. He said, come show them. She had lost 100 pounds herself.
We never talked to her.
And we had never met her, but because of his decision, it impacted her. And it's impacted not just his job, but some other family members as well, in some other areas that he shared with us. And so many ripple effects. We had a gentleman, one of your very first clients, and his sister stopped stuttering after witnessing her brother go on this journey and win. And actually, our client actually sent a video of her leading a Bible study. And we're like, what, we didn't get it at first. So thank you. But, he said, oh, you don't know. She has stuttered her whole entire adult life. And here she was roughly 50 at the time. She stuttered her whole life. And now, because of his decision,
that way,
pretty hard to not love that.
Yeah, that weight falling off him led her. Yeah, it's amazing.
I have very little time left, and I can imagine that one of the big questions on people's minds, and then I've sort of made some notes, and I'll do a bit of a recap because there's so much good in this interview, beyond just the absolute hope that you're giving people, right? That yeah, you might close a door, but the doors that will open, right? The doors that will open are beyond our imagination. What if I'm like, I know, Alan and Angie, I need to make a decision, but I'm not ready. Like, I didn't get that moment of awakening, Alan. I'm looking at the scale and it says 304, and I'm not having the same moment you had. What would you do? What would you say to that person?
Well, what I would encourage them to do is start asking questions. If it continues to go like it's going, we'll always say to ourselves, "Oh, that could never happen," but it does. Here's the first question I would ask. Let's suppose that the lady was 5'7", which we run a lot of 300 plus pound 5'7" ladies. She's 5'7". She's 300. And my next question would be, well, did you ever plan to get to 290? And I don't say it condescending. Did you ever? And start asking questions. But so with that being said, you're not going to plan to get to 310. You're not going to plan to get to 350. You're not going to plan to just start asking questions that will because here's something. Byron Katie, I don't know if you're familiar with Byron Katie, but Byron Katie,
Huge.
yeah.
Huge.
My favorite quote in the world is I you know I when I argue with reality I lose, but only 100% of the
Only
time.
every time.
Yeah, and so when I hear that, that's what I'm hearing. We're arguing with reality. Ask yourself what reality is. Step away from the coping mechanisms for just a minute and ask the hard questions. Ask those questions if it continues. And it's just like we had an individual that was interested in coming in our program, and he wasn't quite ready to. He had he was in his 60s. He was about 30, 40 pounds overweight. Not crazy, 6 foot tall. That's not insane. Most people look at him and say kind of an average guy, no big deal. But he knew it wasn't his best, and he knew it was going to hurt him. And so I wasn't particularly in a hurry for him. And he said, well, check back with me in a month or two. So one of our folks that works with us was checking back with him when Angie and I were on a trip, and I get this text message, call me, from the person who was reached out to this gentleman. And so I called him. I know what's going on. He said, you remember so and so? And I said, yeah. He said, is he ready to go? He said, no, he's gone. He's dead. He's dead. So, and I'm like, are you kidding? Yeah, he died of a massive heart attack. He spoke to his widow. Now, I don't know if we could have changed that. I'm not God. Angie's not God. I don't, we know God, but I'm not him. So at the end of the day, but I believe when somebody is alerted to their weight being a problem, that's a sign. That's like a wake up call. Whether if you're thinking about your weight at all, people ask me what's the ideal weight really, and I give them the example of how to figure it out. But your ideal weight is where you're free. That's where you're free. That's where weight no longer is dominating your thoughts. You're not thinking about it all the time. You're not waking up the next morning after having the box of Oreo cookies and feeling guilty and I'm not saying to eat a box of Oreo cookies at any size, but the point I'm making is you're free. It's you've pushed the door of the cell open because it was never locked. It was always unlocked. You always had the key to it, and you pushed it open and you walked out of it and you're free. That's what ideal weight is. Really, that's what it's like being at it. So but when I think of people in those situations, yeah, they've got to ask the hard questions of themselves, or find somebody who will ask them, who'll be brutally honest, not to shame, not to hurt,
Right.
but in a loving way,
To help get to that awakening, to see it, to awaken that parts that's blended with the part that is using and abusing food for comfort, right? And has led to waking. Okay, we have just a few minutes because I have another call at the top of the hour, but I want to go over some of the things that I heard. First of all, what I'm really hearing is that your whole approach pivots on not giving people a diet and saying, here, this will help you lose weight, but here's a process that will help you get in touch with the part of you that has already awakened, but keeps getting lost or blended with the part of you that's pretty hooked into food as a coping mechanism, or whatever we want to call it. We could call it addiction. We could call it emotional eating, whatever it was, whatever that part is, that you're asking questions that awakens this part so that they're separate now. They're unblended. And then you just keep asking questions that helps you to see clearly, this is not what I want. And I don't want it for these reasons. And because when I look out on the horizon, I do have dreams. I do not want my wife, Angie, to remarry. Thank you very much. I want to be the love of her life in this lifetime. Just saying, right? Like, and you can see that, there's the pain points, the embarrassment that your children had, and the wondering in their heads, does dad love Doritos more than me? If he loved me, would he let the Doritos go? Right? Like, that is painful. And then there's the dreams, the pleasure, the excitement, the joy, the possibilities, right? That we can light up with what will our life be like when we're free? We're not no longer buried under the rubble of this relationship this emotional eating or addiction that we have with food. I also heard about the importance of grace, that there is zero value whatsoever in having that critic continue to play that role, right? That you probably need the food just to cope with a tyrant, an unkind person in your head that's torturing you with nothing but unkindness, and that it really isn't anybody's fault. Obesity is never a choice. We are in a food culture malfunction. We have been bombarded with all these foods that have been heavily processed and tinkered and engineered to make it very, very seductive and difficult for us to let go of. They've hooked us into addictive life relationships, if not full-on addiction. This is a food culture malfunction, and you are a statistic. It's not your fault, right? So the grace, making a clear decision, also about the role of thoughts, that you talked a lot about, the stories that hold us locked into the prison that actually has no lock, right? The stories and the thoughts that we say, I could never live without a sandwich. Is that true? Byron Katie would say.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Absolutely know it's true that you could never live without a sandwich. You want to just try it for 24 hours and see if you die? What happens, right? Like, you experiment and you get your own data, and from deep within you are able to stay unblended from the part of you that's always going to want to go to the food, and look at the data and make your own decisions. I like the idea of no set meal plan, because people know inside, not this part never knows. This part's always going to say, no, the Doritos, I can't live without a sandwich. But there's another part that knows what to do. That deeper part, you help people get access to that, is what I'm hearing. And then you're fully responsible for your results. It's not like, oh, Ellen's plan failed me. Because maybe your meal plan wouldn't have been the right meal plan for them. Maybe it's true, right? But they know inside them it's there. It's like you guide them to what they already know to be true. Wait for the magic. It's simple. What is your truth? And are you ready? For all the reasons you've already connected to, are you ready to just start on the path? And no excuses. There is no excuse. Nothing can stop you except for the stories and the thoughts. And if you can question those, you'll just keep on trucking, because you'll see that they're probably not true.
One really short thing I'll say too, this mentality that we have, that I've got to find something that I'm going to stick to for the rest of my life, no matter what, is the silliest thing in the world. Okay. It's a journey. It is a journey where you make decisions and you figure out what works and what doesn't work. And down the road, you're going to be led to vegetables. You're going to be led to fruit. You're going to be led to, if you choose to eat meat, you're going to be led to meat. You're not going to be led down the ice cream aisle. Okay.
Right.
I'm saying that's an easy term, but the point I'm making is, just start where you are. Like the individual we talked about, like Sean, where it said he figured out that all he had to do to start was to eat less.
Right. I love that.
I mean, and he started, and then we get pictures of the farmer's market from him a week later.
Right.
Figure he knew to go to the farmer's market rather than to the convenience store in the fast food, whatever the stuff is, the Doritos aisle I keep using. But the point is, you figure it out as you go, and so you don't have to find this be all end all perfect things, because that's an excuse.
Right. I love it. This has been absolutely amazing. So your website will be all over where they access this, but can you just say it, just in case people are just listening and want it handy in their head?
transformmyfuture.com. Transform My Future spelled out. And we actually have a free training too as a gift for anybody that's with, and we put, I debate on whether to put no sugar or sugar but it's transformmyfuture.com/sugar on there. And it's a training that Angie and I do that's a 5-step strategy to how we lost our 192 pounds together and how we teach others to do it. But it's something that I want people to understand. If they'll follow that, they'll lose weight.
Right.
They will. It's a simple training. It is. And we had somebody contact us recently, dropped 18 pounds a month. They said, "Oh, I saw your training." And I'm like, "Yep, it's pretty simple stuff, but it's what we actually used in the process." So if they're looking for a diet, don't go there.
Right. And I think and your steps, I think we've got them in one of our packages, and but yes, amazing. I'm sorry that I have to go. This is like pulling me away from Byron Katie. Like, this is I can feel the recovery, the wisdom, the love, I'm so glad that you got this mission, and I'm glad I got to spend this time with you. And thanks everybody for tuning in today.
Thank you so much, folks.
I hope you enjoyed this interview. And before you go, do one more thing. Stop, think back on the interview while it's fresh in your mind, and write down your favorite takeaway in a special dedicated journal. If you do this, at the end of the summit, you'll have a page or two of nuggets of wisdom to guide you forward. And remember, this is just the beginning. At the end of the summit, you'll be invited to attend a free webinar where I will personally summarize the key insights of our speakers and pull it all together into a practical plan of action. You can also check out our Facebook page where you can connect with others and ask questions, and our Kick Sugar Coach podcast and YouTube channel for additional inspiration. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next interview.